Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the totally fascinating psychology behind why we buy what we buy. Every single day, we make just countless purchasing decisions. But have you ever actually stopped to wonder what invisible forces are driving those choices? Well, today, we're going to open up the hood on consumer behavior and look exactly at what marketers see when they look at us. Let's kick things off with a bit of a mystery. How did Beyond Meat convince dedicated meat lovers to literally crave a plant-based burger, completely shifting their deeply ingrained attitudes? When they launched the Beyond Burger back in 2015, they faced a massive uphill battle. At the time, veggie meat products captured only 3% of U.S. packaged meat sales. But here's the brilliant part. Instead of going after vegetarians, Beyond Meat deliberately targeted hardcore meat lovers. To pull that off, they had to understand exactly what makes consumers tick. And that is exactly the puzzle we are going to solve today. So here's our roadmap for demystifying consumer behavior. We'll quickly cover 1. Inside the buyer's black box. 2. 4 forces shaping our choices. 3. The 5-step decision process. 4. Types of buying behavior. And finally, 5. Adopting new innovations. All right, let's dive right into section 1. Inside the buyer's black box, and unpack the stimulus response model. Think about this for a second. Every single day, over 323 million Americans interact with the consumer market. That is a massive, highly unpredictable crowd of individuals. Marketers don't just want to know what all those people are buying. The real holy grail for them is uncovering the whys behind those actions. So how do they figure it out? Enter the stimulus response model. It basically tracks how outside stuff, like your classic marketing stimuli of product, price, place, and promotion, plus environmental shifts like the economy or new tech, enters a consumer's mind. We call this mind space the black box. Inside this box, your personal characteristics and hidden biases get to work, eventually churning out your actual buying responses. What you buy, when you buy it, and how you interact with a specific brand. Which brings us to section 2, the 4 forces shaping your choices. These are the cultural, social, personal, and psychological factors actively working inside that black box. First up, cultural forces. These are literally the bedrock of our wants. Consider the sheer scale of cultural subcultures. To put it into perspective, the U.S. Hispanic market alone wields a staggering $2 trillion in annual buying power. Yes, trillion with a T. Savvy brands know they can't just translate their ads. They have to align deeply with those shared value systems. Next, we've got social factors, things like family, reference groups, and opinion leaders. A great example, Glossier. When they wanted to expand their Body Hero campaign, they bypassed traditional models completely and partnered with WNBA players instead. By letting these athletes share their authentic routines, Glossier tapped directly into entirely new, highly engaged social networks. It was a total game changer. We're also heavily driven by personal factors. Our age, our lifestyle, and most importantly, our self-concept. The basic premise here is really just we are what we have. Harley-Davidson leans into this entirely. They aren't just selling a motorcycle, they're selling an identity of absolute freedom and rebellion. And the fourth force? Psychological factors, like our underlying beliefs and attitudes. This is exactly how Beyond Meat solved their puzzle. Consumers had these deeply ingrained beliefs that plant-based food basically equaled cardboard. So Beyond Meat had to actively rewrite that learned perception just to get meat lovers to take that very first bite. Now that we know the forces at play, let's look at sections 3, the 5-step decision process, where we map out the actual customer journey. This journey typically kicks off when you recognize you have a need. Say, your car suddenly breaks down. That leads you to start searching for information. From there, you evaluate your alternatives, make the final purchase decision, and ultimately experience post-purchase behavior, which really dictates if you'll ever buy from that brand again. Let's zoom in on that evaluation step. Consumers are constantly and subconsciously calculating value. Imagine comparing fitness apps. If a low price is your top priority, but platform compatibility really isn't, an app that scores high on affordability wins easily in your mind. To steal you away, a competing app has to either shift your perception of what a good price is, or convince you that platform compatibility is suddenly an absolute must-have. But what happens after you hit buy? Well, that final post-purchase step is absolutely critical because of something called cognitive dissonance. That's that uncomfortable, sinking feeling of buyer's remorse you sometimes get after a major purchase. Smart brands actively encourage you to complain to them directly because they desperately want to resolve that dissonance before you take your frustration straight to social media. This brings us to Section 4, Types of Buying Behavior. Let's contrast high-involvement decisions with our daily habits. Think about your own day-to-day life. Buying a luxury car? That triggers complex buying behavior. You're highly involved, and you are closely scrutinizing all the brand differences. But grabbing a bag of flour at the grocery store? That's habitual buying behavior. You skip the evaluation phase entirely. Marketers absolutely must know which behavior their product triggers to advertise to you effectively. All right, last but not least, let's explore Section 5, Adopting New Innovations. How do consumers actually embrace the unknown? When a totally revolutionary product drops, we don't just buy it instantly, right? We move through a mental adoption process. First, we just become aware of it. Then we gain an active interest. We evaluate it carefully, maybe sample it in a trial run, and only then do we commit to full adoption. But here's the catch. We definitely don't all adopt at the same time. Consumers fall into specific categories. You've got your risk-taking innovators, followed by early adopters who act as opinion leaders, right through to the early and late mainstream. And finally, you have the lagging adopters, the folks who are really bound by tradition. Actually, Harley-Davidson's current struggle perfectly illustrates this. Their core audience is aging out, and they're struggling to attract younger millennials because that new generation just has a completely different set of values and buying behaviors. So, what makes an innovation spread like wildfire? It hinges on a few key traits. Does it have a relative advantage? Is it highly compatible with our lives? Is it too complex? Can it be easily tried out? And can its benefits be clearly communicated? This is exactly why Beyond Meat won. They offered high compatibility with how we already cook and near zero complexity. I mean, you literally just throw it on the grill like regular beef. That frictionless experience accelerated their massive market adoption. As we wrap up this explainer, I really encourage you to reflect on your own customer journey. The next time you find yourself impulsively adding an item to your online cart or carefully calculating the scores of two competing products, pause for just a second. Ask yourself, what invisible cultural, social, or personal forces are at play here? What hidden psychological forces are shaping the choices inside your own consumer black box right now? Understanding this doesn't just make you a smarter marketer, it makes you a much more empowered consumer. Thanks so much for joining me.